today's collectible spot, we are having a look at the Sideshow Collectibles Star Wars Scout Trooper 6 scale figure. If you know anything about Spot, you probably know that one of my favorite designs for the Stormtroopers or troopers in general of the Empire has always been the Scout Trooper. I don't know what it is, there's just something about the design of the helmet, and I really also have a soft spot towards the speeder bike, but there's always been a real personal draw to the Scout Trooper. And actually, maybe just as a whole, Return of the Jedi seems to be more the sequel that I gravitate towards over the New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. I think it's probably just because when it was released, I was at the age that I could really enjoy the merchandise that was coming out for that film. So maybe like just it's a culmination of everything that ultimately makes me like the Scout Trooper over other figures or other character designs. Speaking of design, the box is pretty much on par with what we've seen from other Sideshow Collectibles fare, or at least for the Star Wars line. We have a black box with side accents of gray and 6 scale down below. The side of the box carries over that same sort of deco. Instead, we are also treated to a different pose, featuring the Scout Trooper and blaster in hand. The back, we are pretty much given the same sort of treatment. Again, another pose to the Scout Trooper. And the cool thing, as you probably already know with the Sideshow Collectibles boxes, at least Star Wars wise, you can open them up. And we got a little bit of tissue paper. We don't need that. But on the inside, we've got Star Wars, which I think could have been a good place to have a little bit of a read up. They don't sadly put anything there, but it's got Star Wars Scout Trooper. And then you've got the Scout Trooper with all his accessories on the other side. With that said, Spot's going to take a break and get this opened up. But when we come back, we're going to get a better look at the Sideshow Collectibles Star Wars Return of the Jedi Scout Trooper 6 scale figure. There's more heading your way, guys. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Just before we have a look at the Scout Trooper 6 scale figure, as we always do first, let's have a look at the display stand that comes with the figure. Yeah, not really much to be said for this particular display stand. It's basically just a black display stand with adjustable neck. But Sideshow Collectibles wouldn't do that. They'll give you a little extra stuff going on, and much like the Hoth Luke Skywalker that we had a look at previously, the display stand is essentially the same sort of idea. Instead of sculpting a brand new stand, what they basically do is they give you the option to customize it, so to speak, to whatever display stand option that you want. So if you are somebody that likes to display their figures in a more basic stance, maybe just on a very neutral stand, you can certainly do it that way. Or what you can also do too is take these extra pieces that came included with the figure, and you can customize it a little bit more to whatever liking that you have for the trooper itself. So for example, you can incorporate this kind of mossy rock diorama display, and as you see, it clips just over top of the existing stand. So if you want to remove it, you can certainly do that. There's, again, lots of options to choose from. As well as that, you get an extra little moss rock area. It doesn't clip on anywhere, so I mean you can kind of display it however which way you want. I probably will just end up displaying it in the front because it's already got so much extra detail on the back. I would want to have something in the front there as well. Doesn't end there though. Sideshow also gives you a couple of other logs, which are painted the same sort of coloring as the rest of the display stand. And you'll see that there's a couple of notches on the bottom. You could, if you wanted to, have them just maybe on the sides of the display stand. They don't really attach to anything. Or, what you can also do too, if you look at the underneath, see the shape of it? I'll just remove this for a second. This shape also matches up, right there, to the stones. And you can take the stones, I'll take the logs, line it up to the stones, and these just tab over top. And you get two different logs. This one has a different shape, which actually matches this shape here, and that snaps just over top. So as you can see, you have lots of options available. You want to go a little less, where it's basically just the stand, you can do that. You can incorporate the logs, you can incorporate the stones. You really have a lot of different options available. So I really appreciate that they would have done that. It's not, it's a lot more affordable for them, at least, to do that rather than giving us two different display stands. So it's a smart idea to include that, and that's really neat. Ultimately, I think at the end of the day, I haven't picked up the actual speeder bike yet. If I picked up the speeder bike, I probably would display the Scout Trooper on the speeder bike, but if I don't ultimately end up picking it up, which I probably will kick myself, I probably will just display him like this, and just display him with the extra stuff on the stand. As it goes for the figure itself, pretty happy with how he turned out. One of the things with Sideshow is, especially like the troopers, is that it's using a fabric undersuit, which basically goes from the neck area all the way down to the boots, and then they add the armor over top. And areas like the knees are added by an elasticized guard that gets put over top of the fabric suit. He's got a separate section, and I would have this section keeps coming off. On top of the black outfit, he's also got this fabric area, which I guess is really, to be honest, the only part of the whole suit I'm not crazy about. Because his armor has almost a dirtied look to it, especially when the further you get down to his boots is really where you start seeing how much dirt is all over the armor itself. But even like the chest guard, the shoulder guards, even the helmet has a dingy look to it. By incorporating the fabric with the pouches on the front, it's one of the only areas from head to toe that is still somewhat pristine, still somewhat white in color. And I wish that actually was a little bit darker to match the rest of his armor, because it does look like it seems a little like it's a departure from the rest of his outfit, to be honest. The pouches are not open. It's not something you can open up, but they are separate pieces from the actual body fabric piece underneath there. But yeah, it's the only part about it. The only body costume piece on the whole suit I'm not crazy about. I just wish that was maybe just a little bit different in color. Maybe just a little bit darker. The face, or in this case the helmet, is really done well. Posability options, well, it can rotate quite easily. It's basically just a hollow helmet on top of a ball socket. It doesn't need to really necessarily have a face underneath. I would not ever display him without the helmet, nor have you ever seen a Scout Trooper without the helmet, or for that matter, any Stormtrooper without a helmet. It's really only until the Clone Wars that we started seeing unhelmeted versions of the characters. But I think they did a really good job on the helmet. I think it looks really good. Like I mentioned, it's got a dark, dingy color that they've added to it, so it's not just strictly a stark white. Stark white could have worked, but I think if you want a more realistic look to it, it definitely needed to have a little bit of dinge, a little bit of dirt residue on it, and I think this figure delivers it well, quite indeed. His goggles, I didn't actually notice this initially, but the goggles, there is a section, I don't know if you can even see it, but on the sides, the goggle doesn't actually go all the way across. The point of vision is only really, the sides are, I guess, little plastic additions to the helmet. It's only really the middle area that's the darker, and I'm not sure why they did that, but I guess that's maybe just the sculpt of the helmet itself. Let's actually take the helmet off. I haven't actually taken this off yet. There we go. Take the helmet off. Let's get a better look at the helmet itself. I think you can see what I'm talking about there. The goggles are not a completely shown through goggle area. It's only really this section to this section. Close up, it kind of looks jarring, to be honest. And I'm not sure why they went that route. I guess it's because the outline of the goggles, yeah, as you can see, the outline of the goggles, there's a good thickness outlining it that it ends up cutting into the visor on the front. A small gripe, you know, from a distance, you may not necessarily look at it. I've also got light shining on it too, which makes it look a little more predominant. Just really always loved the Scout Trooper design. Very much a departure from the regular Stormtroopers, but always very, very cool design if you ask me. One of the accessories to come included with the Scout Trooper is his small blaster, which we've seen him use during Return of the Jedi, and where he conceals or houses the blaster when he's not holding it, he's got a little holster on his leg. Seems like a bit of a reach for him to have that blaster, but if you think about it, if he's riding on a speeder bike, his leg, let's bring the leg forward here, his leg is going to be closer to the reach of his arm, so as he's flying or riding the speeder bike, he can actually pull the blaster out and start firing it while it's still holding, you know, the singular handle of the speeder bike. So that's why it would be down there rather than having the holster further up on his leg. The out-of-package default gloves for the Scout Trooper are the partially closed fists, which I guess theoretically could hold the blaster pretty easy enough. However, you get something that looks a little bit more accurate with one of the interchangeable hands that Sideshow includes. And for Sideshow, they give you 4 extra hands of different sculpts, different options. One is more of a pointing hand, like over there! The other one is more of a blaster hand holding gesture, and then you've got a couple of other options there as well. Funny enough, accessory wise, he only comes really with the blaster. The one other thing that he comes with is the back clip, which there's no instructions with it. I'm pretty sure it just clips onto the back of its belt, and that's actually where I ended up putting it, but it's just this extra, just this little extra piece of his armor, which again had little clips to it. I believe it actually just clips to the back like so. It doesn't really clip the easiest. You have to get it underneath the fabric belt and clips into place like that. To change out the hand, however, is extremely easy. I almost feel like a little too easy. There's not really a lot holding the hands in place. They sit on a peg, as with most 6 scale figures, but because there's these armor plates further down to the wrist area, sometimes the gloves have to work a little extra harder to hold on to the peg, and sometimes they're prone to falling off. This one more so than this one, but as you can see, changing out the hands extremely easy. Then we can take the hand that we want to use and just slides into place. But you can see what I'm talking about. As you're moving it up, you want to make sure that this is far enough up that the hand, the arm can clip onto the peg and stay in place. There's what the blaster looks like in his hand. It is small, yes, and by comparisons to some of the larger blasters that the Stormtroopers have at their disposal, maybe the Scout Trooper has a little bit smaller to work with. But it does, again, perfect sense. If he's on the speeder bike, he needs something very small, very accessible that he can reach for when he's firing at the Rebellion. I hope to get my hands eventually on a speeder bike. I think that's a true accompanying piece when you have a figure such as this. And when I get eventually the speeder bike, knock on wood, hands such as this I think serve a better purpose for holding the handles of the speeder bike. Maybe not necessarily for displaying him as I'm just got him displayed right now. But these definitely will be coming in handy. A little also side note to point out that the gloves themselves are a rubbery plastic type material, so there's a little bit of give to it, and then inside each of the hands is the peg socket. Scout Trooper also gets his fair share of additional boots. Well, he comes with 1 extra pair of boots, and this particular pair has a bent toe. The default, as I've got him displayed currently, is with flat feet. But if you want to have him arched, or for example, if you have him displayed on a speeder bike and you want one of the legs arched back, or one of the feet arched back, you can certainly do that as well. The same carryover of dirt and grime is also presented here in the boots, with full detail also added, and not spared at all with the treads of the boots themselves. Changing of feet are just as easy as changing out the hands. You just slide them out, and almost a little easier than the hands because they're not pegged. They're sitting just on the base of the leg. Then take the foot that you want to change it out to, and let's find the arched foot. You want to just slide that back into place. The boot also has that same rubbery material as the glove, so it means you have to kind of hold it from the base of the boot rather than the top, because the boot's top is going to have a lot of extra give. You want to make sure you slide it into place and connect to the socket, and this is kind of the harder part. See the little peg point at the bottom of the boot? You have to make sure that that attaches to the base of the leg. And just like that, you've got the bent foot, which again is perfect if you want to have them displayed versus that of the flat boot. And also there's still the holster available there for his blaster. Posability, the Scout Trooper gets your standard fare for a 6-scale figure. He does have a ball joint at the top of the head that connects to the helmet itself. However, he has a secondary hinge at the base of the neck, which allows for additional, as you can see there, lunging forward on the neck, especially if you're going to be having him displayed on the speeder bike. I think it makes a little bit more sense that you've got that little extra hinge that you can have him leaning forward. When it comes to his shoulders are also hinged. You can rotate them forward, but you might find that you might have to move this as you're moving the arm forward. If not, this will limit some posability with the arm itself. He has a swivel point on the bicep. He has a hinge, and you have to make sure you find the hinge properly because all of this is covered in fabric, but the hinge point is right there. You can hinge it and also rotate at the forearm, and he can rotate in the wrist. But you can see what I'm talking about. As you rotate the hand, you have to be careful that it doesn't start falling out of the socket. The top of the torso is on its own independent ball joint with also a swivel point at the waist. He's got a hinge, a very flexible articulation in the leg, which is nice. A top swivel cut in the thigh. He's got a double hinge knee, perfect also for riding on the speeder bike. And he's got a swivel and hinge point in the foot. A little more obstructed because the bottom of the feet, not necessarily the top cuts of the boot, but the lower areas of the feet are solid plastic, so you may not be able to bend them as much as you would hope. To this day, the Scout Trooper still remains Spot's personal favorite design of the Empire's troopers. Something about Return of the Jedi, and I think I might have just been at that perfect age that Return of the Jedi came out. I had posters everywhere. I had a lot of the figures more from Return of the Jedi, that the Scout Trooper still holds a soft spot in my heart. Sideshow, I think, did a pretty good job on the figure. There are a few hiccups, yes, here and there. I wish, again, this was a little bit darker, that it didn't stand out as much as it did. Getting the gloves to sometimes stay in place could be a little bit of an issue, but for the most part, very, very happy with how he turned out. The downside to him is probably the same problem I had with the Hoth Luke. Hoth Luke looked good, as well as the Scout Trooper, but they really ask for the accompanying pieces to be included with him. As much as Luke really deserved to have a Tauntaun, and all the more reason to get a Tauntaun to get Luke on top of it, I would have the same reasoning here with Scout Trooper. I love the design of Scout Trooper, but seeing him, he seems just a little naked without, of course, the inclusion of the speeder bike. And hopefully, I will be picking that up in the near future. Speaking of picking up, Spot picked up the 6-scale Scout Trooper here from the folks over at Underground Figures. If you guys are interested in picking this guy up for yourself, or some other really hot 6-scale figures, you can head over there and pick this guy up today. Today we're having a look at the Sideshow Collectibles Star Wars Return of the Jedi Scout Trooper 6-scale figure. Certainly stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more collectible spots heading your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.